The Sandy and Toddcast is a Mind Garden media podcast in association with
Screw You, Todd
Productions. It's another week. That means another Sandy and Toddcast. And this week, more aliens and more weird stuff.
You know, I really thought this was only going to be one episode, and now we're on the third episode about aliens with the Congressional hearing last week and everything else going on. I think this week we're going to finally wrap it up, but we still have some more stuff to talk about.
So stick around. The Sandy and Toddcast is next. Season 9, Episode 4, Aliens Among Us. It's next.
Hey guys, it's me, Sandy.
And this is Dave, better known as #Poor Dave.
We don't always call you that. Anyway, in case you didn't know, Dave and I are part of a great new show called Empire Spirits.
It's where we hunt lots of ghosts in some of the most well-known bars and restaurants in central New York, along with a great cast
Of characters.
Yep, Bill Vinci, Michelle Klossick, Ryan Vinci, Lafayette Cunningham, and Heather Elias.
You'll be able to see each episode starting this fall on Facebook and YouTube.
Just like our Facebook page, Empire Spirits CNY, to keep up to date on the latest.
But we can't leave you without thanking our sponsors because, well, without them, it just wouldn't be happening.
So a big thanks to the Stife on Varick Street in Utica, Bill Vinci and the Empire Plate, Utica Coffee Roasting Company, and the Sandy and Toddcast.
We'd also like to thank Northeastern Roofing and Construction, northeasternroofs.com, Labella Flowers, that's labellaflowers.com, and Independent Artistry by Dawn Marie, Independent Artistry by DMF.com.
And we can't forget licensed real estate person Paul F. Sacco, 315-525-1377 with Howard Hanna Real Estate Services, or Joshua A. Amodio with Priceless Inspections, Central New York's top choice home inspector since 2012, 315-525-8725.
Now, back to the show.
Broadcasting from two very different yet magical places not found on any map. Get ready to discuss the strange, weird, ghostly, crazy, spooky, and odd things that take place around us each and every day, all while having a little bit of fun. This is the Sandy and Toddcast. And welcome again to the Sandy and Toddcast. She is Sandy.
He is Todd.
And we're here to talk more about weird stuff, aliens. May we talk about skinwalkers this week? Possibly. It could happen.
Possibly. We just keep rolling along with aliens. We could have, in the end, probably made an entire season out of it with all of the stuff that's coming in, especially with the Congressional hearing last week and all that kind of stuff. So a little bit more this week, probably end up wrapping it up and moving on to a new topic next week. But then after we talk about aliens this week, got a few other things we want to discuss. All coming up.
Let's talk a little bit about the last time we talked a lot about the Congressional hearings.
Yeah.
And we talked specifically about some of the things that were said and the individuals that were there. You had a little bit, it's so funny because sometimes when we talk about something, then right after we talk about something, like the first week we were talking about aliens, then the Congressional hearings took place. So it's just, and then this week, both of us had an experience outside of the podcast regarding these hearings. And I thought, well, we should follow up on what you experienced and something that I experienced.
Yeah, I just thought it was really interesting because I've turned into this crazy YouTube person.
Turned into? Come on.
Well, I've gotten into it a lot more lately because I'm really getting into, you'll laugh at me. You always do. But I'm really getting into like the police interrogation videos for these different criminals who are brought in on, murder and stuff like that. And it's so interesting because it's so psychological.
Yeah.
You don't really realize how psychological interrogations are. And I've learned so much, but it's so easy to go down the rabbit hole. So I've been getting into these a lot lately. And I was scrolling the other day through And I came across this guy. Now, we're not affiliated with this man at all, but he goes by, I think it's Mr. G on YouTube. And he is a body language expert and some kind of a clinical therapist or something to that effect. And he does videos where he takes other videos and analyzes people's body language. So a lot of murderers, he even has done Ted Bundy. He's done the recent Long Island, I think it's the Gilba Beach murders that I actually remembered. It was 27 years ago. And I looked at Dave and I said, Dave, I remember when they were finding these bodies and things and they had no idea it was an unsolved case. 27 years later, they finally got the guy. And so he really... Chad Dorman, who recently horrific murdered his 3 children. I think it was in Ohio. So what he does is he analyzes their body language and the things they do. And so one of the videos he did recently was the 3 gentlemen who were the quote unquote whistleblowers at the congressional hearing last week for UFOs or UAPs, however you prefer to say it.
Right.
It was fascinating.
So was he actually just watching footage of the hearing itself?
Yeah, it's
Gotcha.
a split screen. It's a split screen, and you've got him on one side. He's very believable. You know, he's got a lot of credentials. And then on the other side, he'll take the video of them, and he'll pull it apart. So he'll teach you how to look for the mouth turning down or the eyebrows going up or the way that they hold their hands, open palm, closed palm. And it's funny, I mentioned the interrogation because in a lot of ways, it's exactly the same kind of thing that they do when they analyze the interrogation.
Sure. And
how the police officers and detectives actually interrogate the suspects. So they look for visual, cues or audible cues from the suspects. And so that's what he's looking for when he looks through these videos. So he takes you through bit by bit and the different things that these 3 guys say and how they say them and their body language while they're saying them. It's fascinating. This was interesting. He watched Mr. Grush on I think it was Newsweek interview that he did about it and kind of thought at the time that he seemed kind of deceptive in his explanation of it. However, when he went through the entire congressional hearing, and he doesn't do that in this video, he only goes through parts of it in his video. But when he went through everything at the hearing, he actually said that all 3 gentlemen appeared to be telling the complete truth. Now, it's interesting because a lot of times, and you'll hear people say this, experts say this, that you can come across as being believable if you believe it to be true yourself, if you wholeheartedly believe something. That's how sometimes people can actually beat lie detector tests. It doesn't happen often, but if you actually in your mind believe that something is true, that in and of itself can be deceptive. But he said for the most part that everything that he saw from those 3 gentlemen in that video, they were not being deceptive at all. They were literally telling the truth. Like the things that they were talking about, they truly believe is going on. So I thought that was interesting. I find it hard to believe that all 3 gentlemen, if it's completely false, all 3 gentlemen who were not really that affiliated with each other over the years would come together now and all 3 would wholeheartedly believe something that wasn't true.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was really interesting. And you should check this guy out. Like I said, we're not affiliated with him in any way, but I think it's Dr. G. And he's just really cool to watch. He did the Taylor Schabusiness from Milwaukee, that trial that just ended where she, I don't even know how to say it. She murdered her lover, strangled him to death, and then dismembered him. And his poor mother found his head in a pail in the basement. That happened in February of 2022. She just got through with her trial. They found her sane. they found that she was not insane at the time that she did the murder. So her sentencing is in September, and she will be, I'm sure, going to jail for the rest of her life. But he did hers as well. I found that one to be very interesting. So you guys should check it out. It's like really cool. And there are a few other ones out there, but I thought he was really, really cool. So his basically, he said, they're telling the truth.
That's interesting. And my kind of play off this was my full-time job is I work for a couple of radio companies. One of them is a talk network. Mm-hmm. And it really is, it's not the kind of talk network we're all probably very familiar with, where there's screaming and yelling and bashing and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
It's really more of a straightforward, thought-provoking kind of situation. But they were talking about these hearings. And so, of course, my ears perked up right away because I'm like, well, we just talked about that. We were talking about aliens and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And the show host, who I really have a lot of like for, I think she's very good at what she's an entertainer. She's not like a political scientist or anything like that. She's an average person who has a good sense of humor, who finds good things in almost everything. You know, they were talking about, do you believe in aliens? Do you believe in UFOs? And they're all kind of going, I don't know, you know, were these guys believable, blah, blah, blah. What they were thinking about, though, was not whether or not there's aliens so much or whether or not these guys were talking truth, but how unbelievable in our country, with everything else going on in our lives and in our country that needs attention, that these hearings were supported completely bipartisan.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Both Republicans and Democrats were very interested in getting some answers to the questions that they had. Mm-hmm. And so their thought process was this. All right, listen, we know it doesn't matter if you're blue or if you're red, if you're Republican or if you're Democrat. Okay, the truth of the matter is no party is perfect, right? There's got to be some common ground. But typically, whenever you have congressional hearings, they typically are only supported by one side or the other. And if one side is supporting it, the other side wants nothing to do with it. And if that side has something to do with it, well, then we don't want to have any. But for some reason, both the Democrats and Republicans were very interested in this. And they said, Here's the thing to keep in mind. We're both sides interested in it in order to try and take away the importance of some of the other things that are going on in the background in our country right now. Right. And that's the interesting part I thought about it, because when we talked about the conference or the hearings, I was thinking, wow, finally we come together on something that, you know, we all kind of want to have answers to. And then somebody brought up, oh my God, yeah, they're all interested in it because they don't want you looking over here at what's going on with, you know, with the former president, or you don't want to hear what's going on over here with the Democrats. And it's like, God dang it, they're right about that.
I know. I was the same way at first. I'm like, finally, we have something we all agree on. And then I thought more about it and I was like, you know, this is kind of crazy. You know, it's like a manipulation.
Of course it is.
And
yes, it is something we should be discussing, and it is something we should be discussing on both sides, I think. But
I agree.
But are they doing it for the right reason, or are they doing it to take away attention from other shit?
Look, it shouldn't just be aliens. We have so many horrible things dividing this country right now. And I'll be the first to admit, I get rid of people a lot of times who, not people who disagree with me, but people who are obnoxious about it. You know, we can all disagree with each other, but where I think it comes in is when people are overly obnoxious and rude and mean to each other about it. We have so many things in this country that we're divided on right now. And to know that aliens are the things is the one thing that we come together on. It's sort of like during the hearing when one of the gentlemen said, one of the congressmen said, well, how is this getting funded? And he said, well, misappropriation of funds.
Yep.
It's, you know, they said it to be XYZ in the budget, but it's really going to ABC on the side. And I thought, isn't it the same thing, like a bait and switch? You know, they're trying to get us all to be so thankful that they're all getting along on Aliens, but yet all of this other shit is going on that is tearing us apart. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm just as fascinated and interested in knowing if there's aliens out there as anybody else, but it's true. It's a great point. Why are they so into this when there's so many other things happening in this country that we need to really take care of?
Another little thing that happened to me this week that was work related also made me realize how important it is as an individual to be open to so many other viewpoints.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many, there's a great band. Their name is Spin Doctors. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I never knew what Spin Doctors meant. I never knew what the TV show Spin City meant when it was on TV with Michael J. Fox. And then I finally learned it's about people who can take the narrative and spin it to feed people who buy into that.
Right.
And, you look at TikTok and you see some of the stuff that's on there. Some of these TikTok challenges are freaking deadly. They're dangerous, right? I mean, look at before TikTok, the Tide Pod challenge. We had kids eating Tide Pods because that was the narrative. We have people believing things about the universe or about this religion or that religion because it's on TikTok.
Right.
And we just have to be careful about the spin on stuff. We need to take in the information, take some step backs, and before you even process that, get another viewpoint on it.
Right.
Talk to somebody else who thinks a different way. And then maybe talk to a third person. I mean, we've gotten to the point where we never discuss anything anymore. What we do is we scream our opinions and we want everybody to believe it. And then that's it. That's the way it is. There's no discussions anymore.
We talk at each other. We don't talk to each other.
Yeah.
And it's been like that for a long, long time. I'm one of those people that looks at the big picture of almost everything in my life. I'm having a horrible day today, but I'll tell you what, tomorrow I'm going to wake up and it's going to be better. And the horrible day that I'm having today is not nearly as bad as someone in country ABC or someone who lives on the streets or who this or who that. We just had we're shopping for a new recliner. And my big worry today is, where are we going to get a recliner from at a reasonable price when there's people who have a lot worse problems than I have at this point? We should all be talking to each other. When we mentioned this last week, Todd, when we had Jason Offutt on the show a few seasons ago.
And if you didn't listen to that, you've got to go back and either listen to it or watch it in our videos, because it was a great freaking interview.
But he's fantastic. I bought his book, and it's one of his books. He's got tons of books out. But we had the most amazing conversation about aliens, and he made a great point. If aliens come down and want to attack us, all of our arguments, all of our fights, all of our differences around the world will be gone. Because instead of attacking each other, whether within our own country or between countries, we're going to have to come together as one planet to handle whatever is going on. And I thought that was a fascinating point, because it's the truth. If we can't even come together in our own country and find solutions to gun violence, to drugs, to all of the things that we fight about every day, then how in the world, maybe they're right. Maybe we aren't ready to know that aliens exist. Maybe we aren't ready, because if we can't come together to handle the problems that we face every day, how can we come together as a planet and fix some of the problems and the things that are going on for all of us globally? So I'm going to step off my soapbox, but he's right. He made an amazing, amazing point in that, and we kind of laughed about it at the time, but It's true. We have to start talking to each other and not talking at each other, not being rude, not calling people names. I don't care what you want to call a liberal. I don't care what you want to call a Republican. Stop calling each other names and actually listen to each other and see if we can find that common ground. And I do believe you're right. And I do believe that the talk show was right in that it's smoke and mirrors. Because if we're going to come together bipartisan on aliens, why can't we come together bipartisan on all the problems that we have?
Yeah.
So that's just my point of view on it. But look at the big picture. The big picture is we're all human beings. We all have to come together and fix this mess that we've made for ourselves.
It'll never happen. We'll all be dead before it happens.
No, but the good news is...
Are you drinking like a wine spritzer or something? Or
No.
That?
It's a diet juice that I'm like totally in love with. It's like Tropicana. It's so good. But the good news is that Nuts on Clark will always live on.
Oh, wait. We were going to talk about this.
We were going to talk about it because I did find a place. Because, Nuts on Clark is in Chicago. So unless we drive to... Now, we're still planning. We have some little bumps in the road to figure out. But we're still planning on meeting up in Cleveland. I laughed every time I say Cleveland. Meeting up in Cleveland next month for our annual vacation. And it's kind of a bummer because you guys, when you drive out, are not going to be anywhere near Nuts on Clark because I was going to have you swing by and get me some.
I wouldn't anyway. I would not. I wouldn't. You know what? You can order it in the mail.
You can order it online. Is
their stuff so much better than everybody else's, really? Or is it just because it's Nuts on Clark?
No, it really is like the best. I love popcorn. It really is the best in the world. Their Chicago mix, which is the cheddar and caramel, is the best ever. Like, it's so delicious. All of their kinds are really delicious. I did find one locally that I have to say does give them a run for their money, but not. It's called Ma and Pa Kettles. It's in Liverpool, New York. It's only about 35 minutes from our camp. So we've made some trips out there. They go around to a lot of the festivals and fairs. They have a truck too. They started out doing kettle corn and now they have like over 100 different flavors. I even had lemon pound cake flavored last week. And it is, because I like lemon, it is the best in the world. It was so delicious. So all kinds of different flavors. But I did find one that's close enough that gives me that fix. I had their Chicago mix. It's very, very good. But no one will ever beat Nuts on Clark. So as long as Nuts on Clark still exists and they ship, let the world fall down. I at this point, I'm living for popcorn, Todd. I'm just living for popcorn. That's all I got. So let's talk a little bit more about aliens. Let's wrap it up this week. I have no idea what we're talking about next week, but let's wrap it up this week. And I think we were going to start maybe conspiracy theories because we did get kind of a conspiracy theory request.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we might start some conspiracy theories. I'd love to know what everybody thinks about what some of their favorite conspiracy theories are. So I think I'll put a post up in the group and on the page this week and see if anybody wants to chime in and give us some ideas of what they'd like to hear about.
And along with that, I think one of the things that people have brought up is glitches in the Matrix.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly. Which is kind of a conspiracy thing, if you think about it.
Yes.
Kind of ties in with that. So I think we'll talk about that this season as well, because I think that's a really interesting thought. A lot of people think that it's all craziness, but I don't know that it's necessarily craziness because we've already had scientists confirm things like wormholes and, some time slips, different things like that. So it might be really cool to talk about that. But anyways, let's wrap it up this week. We're going to talk just a little bit briefly about Skinwalker Ranch because it is one of my favorite things to learn about and discuss. Skinwalker Ranch is also known as the Schuman Ranch, and it's located in the Uinta Basin of Utah, 512 acres total, so it's really large. It borders a Native American reservation, and the Native Americans really come into play in this, and I'll talk about that a little bit in a second. It's known for its paranormal activity, cryptid activity, UFO activity, the list goes on and on. The name Skinwalker comes from a Navajo legend, or is it really a legend? Because we don't really know for sure. I always say I have immense respect for the Native Americans and their beliefs and their culture. And I always believe that from any quote unquote, I'm doing air quotes, legend, it's born from a little bit of truth. And so is it really a legend, the Skinwalker? We don't know. But a lot of the things that go on this ranch actually sort of meet the criteria of Skinwalker. So on the ranch, they've had vanishing and mutilated cattle, sightings of UFOs or orbs, large animals with piercing red eyes that they say were unscathed when struck by bullets, most notably wolves, and invisible objects emitting destructive magnetic fields. Now, there's a couple of stories that were going around over the years. I watched a documentary not too long ago on Skinwalker Ranch, and they kind of dispelled or changed a few of the facts around. There was a book out several years ago that I had called The Hunt for the Skinwalker, and it was a really, really good book. But few of the facts in there kind of got misconstrued over the years. A couple of stories. One story was that the owners of the ranch were walking the fence line one day. They had cattle. They were raising cattle on the ranch. And all of a sudden, this large wolf-like creature, larger than them, not your normal wolf, came walking up towards them and seemed kind of curious, and they were just watching it. And then it went over to a calf that was inside one of the corrals and kind of grabbed it through the fence line and was trying to take it. They rescued the calf, went out and got like a 30-06 and shot at it several times, and it was fine. It was unscathed. And it took off running. They've seen them a couple of times on the property over the years. There was a story of two very large bulls, and we all know how mean bulls can be, that were outside in a corral one day. And the owner went in, comes back out, his bulls are missing, can't find them anywhere. Nobody had been there with a truck. I mean, these are mean bulls. Lo and behold, finds them locked in a shed on the property. The bulls are sort of out of it. They're sort of lost in, kind of foggy, like not moving, not being bulls in any way. They finally got them corralled back into the actual corral, and then they were okay. Mutilated cattle, all kinds of things. So a lot of weird stories going on Skinwalker Ranch. Now, what is a skinwalker? Well, in Navajo culture, a skinwalker is a type of harmful witch who has the ability to turn into, possess, or disguise themselves as an animal. The word itself in the Navajo language translates to, by means of it, it goes on all fours. The Native Americans who live around the ranch, who live in the Uinta Basin, will not go near the ranch. They will not go near the property. They have all had, in their homes, they have all had things happen. They've all seen things. The Native Americans are very hesitant. I won't say they never do, but they're very hesitant to speak about skinwalkers because they are afraid for their lives. This is how deeply they believe in skinwalkers. There is one of the beliefs is that you can become, if you are a Native American, you can become a skinwalker by, and I don't know the whole thing, I'm just paraphrasing this, by basically essentially killing a member of your family, eating them. You can become a skinwalker that way, but they really are very terrified of talking about it. You won't find many of them that will. And for someone, I just look at it, Todd, as for someone to be that seriously afraid to speak about something, maybe there is some sort of truth in there somewhere. We don't know for sure. We only know, we said this last week, We only know as much science as we know at this point in time. We can't, I always say to people who say, well, prove that's a ghost. Well, prove to me it's not. It goes both ways. Prove to me it's not. You want to believe in science, but I'm telling you, we don't know. Science tomorrow could be different than science today. So prove to me it's not. Now, there are several theories about Skinwalker Ranch floating around. Number one, people are lying to make money. Well, always a possibility, right?
Yep.
Always a possibility.
Yep.
However, the number of documented cases are very interesting. The number of people who have been given permission to go on the property and have had experiences are numerous. A lot of money has changed hands over the years. A lot of money has been spent by research people or billionaires to buy this property and set up research on it, all to still have no definitive proof. So if they're trying to make money off of it, they're not doing a very good job because they're spending millions and millions of dollars and getting nothing out of it, essentially.
Right.
There's nothing proven. So obviously that's an option. The other theory is that there are extraterrestrial visitors. One of the most popular theories is ETs, as a matter of fact. It would definitely explain a lot of things like the bright lights, the flying objects, strange voices, electrical disturbances, and cattle mutilations with scientific precision. Is that going on? Well, the government obviously is telling us that something is going on.
Right.
Interdimensional visitors. So they basically arrive from a parallel dimension or a universe. It could explain things like Bigfoot and other cryptids on the property, disappearing cattle, lights in the sky that show up and then completely disappear. So basically, your wormhole, your portals, things like that. Mass hallucinations is another theory, that geophysical forces like tectonic shifts, seismic activity, geomagnetic fields, and other things which have all been documented in that area may affect the part of the brain involved with creating hallucinations. Totally a possibility.
It is,
well.
but that right there in itself kind of blows my mind, right?
I know. Well, we all know that. I mean, I have been in a place where there are ley lines. And as a matter of fact, up in Watertown, a couple of years ago, Dave and I went up near Fort Drum in Watertown, New York. Dave and I took a drive up for the day, and we went to this place in, I think it's Thompson Park is what it's called. So I wasn't expected to talk about it, but it's an area where there are ley lines. And so it's sort of called the Area 51 because of the energy shift there. And I will tell you this, I wasn't expecting much because some of the stories are that people are in that area and then they end up in another area of the park without even realizing that they're in that they've traveled there.
That's spooky.
I don't know about that. It's possible. There's a lot of people saying that that's happened. But what I will tell you is I deal in energy, and there is a definite energy shift in there. And so could it be that there's a portal? Sure. Could it be that it's just the energy affecting people who aren't used to that amount of energy, to that shift, and maybe making them think they were doing something or something happened to them? That's possible. There's sheets of limestone underneath this area. So it's a possibility. It's kind of scary and crazy, but it's a possibility.
I mean, if you simplify that down a little bit, when you go to certain locations, not only in America, but around the world that are at different elevations and things of that nature, there are, like for instance, you go to the Stanley Hotel, right? Mm-hmm. And you're at that elevation. It affects your body.
Exactly.
Okay, you get headaches, you have dizziness, restlessness, stuff like that. So we know on a simple level that even elevation can affect us. imagine what some of these other things could possibly do, not only to us physically, but how about emotionally or energy-wise?
Sure. And
who knows?
the one thing that I thought about with mass hallucinations and the stories that have taken place is it is kind of odd to me that even if you and I are standing in the same place and we're both being affected by something, I don't know what the chances are that we'd both be affected by the same exact thing. Do you see what I'm saying? So in other words, if we're on Skinwalker Ranch and we're walking up by the corral and this large wolf starts coming at us, why are we both seeing it? You know what I mean?
Well,
why aren't you seeing a killer clown and I'm seeing Bigfoot?
That I don't know, but that would be, but again, if you simplify that down, if we're standing in a doorway and we walk out into rain, we're both going to get wet. So maybe if you, again, that's a very simplified version of me saying, but why couldn't at that level of experience, you have the same.
It's true. It's true.
And people like us, I mean, we have energy connection. So if we believe that you and I are somehow connected,
it's true.
Then, I mean,
it's true. I don't know. Honestly, I think without a doubt, 100% that something is going on there. Do I think it's been enlarged over the years a bit? Because that's how legends are born. You know, there's kind of a little bit of truth and then there goes craziness. Sure. The people who originally owned the ranch from the 1930s, they owned it for years and never, ever, 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 ever until I think it was 1993 when the woman sold it because her husband had passed and she was going to go into a nursing home. And so she sold the ranch. They never talked about anything weird happening there. It never happened there until the Shermans bought the place. I think it was 1993. They lived there 2 years, and they're the ones that started having all the craziness. Does that mean it never happened? It's like if a tree falls in a forest and nobody sees it, did it fall? You know, that doesn't mean everything.
And also, maybe the change in what was happening there has nothing to do with the sale of the property to new people. It could, but maybe it had something to do with another event.
Right.
That, that happened about the same time. And logically, as humans, you start to look at things from our perspective of what may have changed. And that's the first thing we look at, right? Exactly.
As paranormal investigators, we all know that a lot of times what happens, you move into a new place, you do renovations here, that one event creates chaos.
Yep.
And so we don't know all the particulars of anything that went on. We don't know if there was a specific event in the universe that would have caused more activity. Do I think the government knows a lot more than they let us know about Skinwalker Ranch? I most certainly do. I personally think it's all of the above. I think that it's the perfect storm of some people trying to take advantage of it. People seeing things because of the reputation that it's gained over the years. And also physically, it could be very possible, like we talked about, that there are people seeing things due to, different conditions. Do I think that there is UFO activity there? I most certainly do. Do I think that it involves cryptids? Do I think that it's other dimensional? One of the biggest theories out there today about Sasquatch and cryptids is that the reason we can't get Sasquatch is because he's an interdimensional traveler. I think it's probably a little bit of all of the above. There's something going on there. We just don't know what it is. I will
wrap up my kind of thoughts on it by saying this. And I apologize because I'm not sure of the exact wording to use. I mean, for a long time, people would call indigenous people here, they would call them Indians, which we know is not correct. And then we use the term Native Americans, which seems better, but really is not, because it was not America, right?
Right.
So
right.
I will just say, I will call them indigenous. I will call them natives to this land that we now live on. I find people who are from that background to be so far advanced.
Yes.
In so many ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I would, the information you could learn from that heritage and people of that culture, it's amazing to me. They were so open-minded about so many things. And I think for a long time, they were looked upon as being primitive and simple and blah, 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 blah. And it turns out that they may have had the most opened minds ever. And in other parts of the world as well for natives. Same thing, pyramids and things of that nature and what that meant. And not just in Egypt, but in parts of Central and South America and all that kind of stuff. It's like there was stuff going on. We have no frickin' clue.
There's been stuff going on for thousands of years. Look at the hieroglyphics in Egypt of UFOs. I mean, they've known. There's an idea that actually aliens, I hate using that word, but aliens from other galaxies, universes actually came here and helped us begin our civilization. They actually set us up. That's an idea that's out there. Well, and I'm saying, I don't know that it's that far off.
Yeah, I mean, I can sit here and we've had discussions on our podcast before about how some of us are star seeds from other galaxies, et cetera, et cetera. And the first thing I think is, whatever, thank you, bye. But in all actuality, I know that, it's possible. So
the farther we get into this, the more we realize that anything is possible. I think that's what's so important about our show and us is that we're willing to keep our minds open about things. I'll play devil's advocate all day long, but I think that's part of what you should do and keep your mind open to the possibilities. I can't explain the experience I had at 16 years of age, and I will never explain it until we know for sure what's going on. But it certainly made me think a lot more, especially in my older years, where you're when you're young, you don't really care as much. And then sort of like with anything, politics, anything. And then the older you get, the more important it becomes to you to kind of get some answers in your life about anything. So I don't know. One cool thing that happened as we wrap up our alien trilogy here is a thing called the Schuman I keep wanting to say residence, Todd. Resonances. And you've heard of these before, right?
Yes.
Or this.
Yes.
Right.
But only in the last, say, month or so, right?
Yeah,
last
me too. I had no idea this was going on. According to NASA, at any given moment, about 2,000 thunderstorms roll over Earth, producing some 50 flashes of lightning every second. Each lightning burst creates electromagnetic waves that begin to circle around the Earth, captured between Earth's surface and a boundary about 60 miles up. Some of the waves, if they have just the right wavelength, combine, and they increase in strength to create a repeating atmospheric heartbeat that's known as the Schuman resonance. The resonance provides a useful tool to analyze Earth's weather, its electric environment, and to even help determine what types of atoms and molecules exist in the Earth's atmosphere. Totally interesting to me because I had no knowledge of this. Now, they'd been predicted in 1952. And they were the first measured reliably in the early 1960s. So since then, scientists have discovered that variations in the resonances correspond to changes in the seasons, solar activity in Earth's magnetic environment, in water aerosols in the atmosphere, and other earthbound phenomena. It can actually affect our own well-being, too. It's considered by some to aid us in our manifesting that we do, because, of course, it's energy. And what are we harnessing as we manifest. We're using our own energy. We're harnessing energy to manifest the things that we want. So on June 18th through the 20th, just a couple months ago, something really weird happened. A never-before-seen pattern emerged in the Schuman resonance. Typically, the resonances don't change much, so they're just the same pattern over. And actually, in Russia, they have a setup that observes the Schuman resonance. I'm not sure if they have other ones. I just know about the Russian one, and I'll tell you why in a second. But this one in June just went crazy. Lots of people started thinking it could have something to do with aliens because of that. So it was sort of, we know that there are projects that actually shoot codes and things, different stuff into signals up into the universe to see if we get responses back. That's been going on for years and years and years. So people are thinking that maybe the aliens responded back to us, and that's why it looks all crazy. What's even stranger, and I wish I had known about this as it was occurring, is that social media and Google were going crazy about this thing at first for like 2 days straight. It was going crazy. And then all of a sudden, things about it just disappeared. So even the guy in Russia who keeps track of it, they have a live feed of the Schuman resonance. So you can just Google it and then go on the thing and you can look at the live feed of the Schuman resonance. The live camera feed went off the air.
Of course.
So I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's a cover up. I don't know if it's aliens. I don't know what happened, but it's really, really strange. And what I take away from it is, how freaking cool is that there is even something like the Schuman resonance that exists that I didn't know about, and that we can actually... It's probably like paint drying on the wall to watch this live feed. I'm sure it is, except when it went crazy. But how cool that we can watch it and know that it's circling the earth and that we're using it in science to be able to predict weather and different things in the way it's created. Just thought that was really cool. Is it aliens? I don't know. Were they answering us back? Only the government knows, apparently, not us. So just kind of neat.
So many things we could talk about.
Well, it's funny because people just grab onto everything. And, everything's aliens, everything's cryptid. Who knows? We don't know.
If you want to have a fun test sometime, go online, go on YouTube, and look up hertz. Not the car, okay? But hertz tones, okay? And what they're different frequencies of tones, and we've heard them all before or not heard them depending on what your listening range is, okay?
Right.
But it's the same thing with EMF. They say if you're in a situation where there's a lot of electromagnetic fields, like in your basement when maybe the wiring isn't great, whatever, it can affect you in ways, right? There's all sorts of stuff out there that can affect us that we don't see or feel or touch. Or whatever. Go online and listen. You can get all the different hertz tones and you can play them on YouTube. And there are some that are so high that you can't hear them, but you can almost feel them. And there's some that are so low you can't hear them, but you can almost feel them.
That's wild.
It is wild. All
right, I got to check that out too.
Yeah, I'll just, we got to wrap up. We've been going a long time today.
I know.
But back in the days of old radio, and they used to use these big machines with big reel-to-reels on them. And in order to automatically switch from one reel-to-reel to the next at the end of a song, they would put on a 20 hertz tone. And the 20 hertz tone was just inaudible enough that you really couldn't pick it up if you were listening to the radio station, but it was detectable by the equipment to start the next song.
That's crazy.
It is. So sometimes you might be listening to a radio station and you hear a very low, kind of like that. That was a tone that was audible to the equipment, but not to the human ears listening to this radio station.
Oh,
and
that's crazy.
That's the first time I went, There's like stuff around us all the time we don't even know about, you know?
There is. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
And then people don't believe in ghosts. They're around us all the time.
We went from one song to another with a tone you couldn't hear. And like dog whistles. Wasn't that the craziest thing? You'd blow a whistle and the dog would turn his head and you're like, what are you looking at? So
what? So, all right. Well, we've got Lorna.
Yep.
Lorna's coming up in just a sec. She pulled a card for us this week. A big thank you to Lorna. So let's do that.
Hi, it's Lorna again. This week's card for the collective is from the Healing Energy Oracle, and the card is Release. The message on the card says the following: I stop fighting my fears and the hardships of life. I control my thoughts, live in the present moment, and accept each stage of life. I work on what I have power over and put into God's hands what I can't change. I trust that everything will work out for the best. I feel like this card is a follow-up to the supermoon energy that we witnessed last week. Although the card says release, I feel the real message here is to surrender to the universe or the higher powers that you connect with. Randomly, the wondrous words of Beyonce come to mind immediately with this card. And at the risk of sounding like a goof, I'm actually going to say the lyrics. Release your anger, release your mind, release your job, release the time. Release your trade, release the stress, release the love, forget the rest. Whatever shit is causing interference in your life, release it to the universe to sort it out for you. I know I say it often, but the universe has your back. Take the weight off and feel the difference that it makes to your body, physically and emotionally. Notice the difference and have an awesome week.
Thank you, Lorna. If you are interested in joining Lorna's group on Facebook, you can message us through our Facebook group and our Facebook page, and we will put you in touch with joining her spiritual Facebook page. Okay.
Amazing woman.
Very
amazing
positive
page.
Yep.
Very positive. We need some positivity in our world. Next week, we're going to start a little, I don't know. I don't want to call it a segment because segment's kind of odd, but each week we're going to talk about one of the top 10 unexplained mysteries around the world.
All right.
Is it aliens? Is it just craziness? We don't know yet, but we'll start talking about that. And then next week, we're going to talk about my upcoming return to Gettysburg that's coming up in a couple of weeks.
All right, let's quickly do our spiel.
You can find the Sandy and Toddcast on any of the platforms that you normally find your podcasts, including YouTube and Twitter. Be sure to like the Sandy and Toddcast on Facebook to keep up on the latest goings-on, including each week's episode. You can also join our group, Stay Weirdos, friends of the Sandy and Toddcast, for more fun. Stay Weirdos is a safe place to share your thoughts, feelings, ideas, and random inappropriate memes without judgment. Sandy and Todd also have a podcast called the Empathecary Podcast. It's for empaths, by empaths. And if you know an empath, you might want to listen too. Find and like the page on Facebook. And finally, if you're thinking about starting your own podcast and just aren't sure where to start, Sandy and Todd can also help with that too. Mind Garden Media is their latest project where the dynamic duo can guide you every step of the way in your podcasting journey. Editing, producing and consulting is what they do. Like Mind Garden Media on Facebook or email them at themindgardenmedia@gmail.com. And as always, thanks for staying weird.
And that's going to wrap it up for this week. We will talk to you next week, hopefully. Again, we will post information about that Jason Offutt interview that we did a while back. So check that out before next week and then join us next week for another episode of the Sandy and Toddcast. Until then, bye.
Bye.